Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Once again, Joe Nice, your host with the most from coast to coast, coming to you as always live and direct, as is usually the case every single day, or maybe not every single day, but most days, on a January 11th, 2021, January 11th, 2021, 1112021. Going to continue the conversation about everything that has happened over the past 5 or 6 days. Actually, really more like 5 days. I'm going to continue to have these conversations because I feel they are more vital and more important now more than ever. I want to make sure that everybody focuses on what my shirt says right now. My shirt says, "People of color don't exist to help white people understand their privilege." It's here, black and white letters. I want to thank the wonderful folks at americahates.us. They're a black-owned business. You can buy many socially conscious garments from that organization, from that business. Please support them. I've bought, I think, 3 t-shirts from them over the past several months, and they all have a message, and they all have an important message. And this is one of these messages that I want to make sure people understand today, is that people of color don't exist to help white people understand their privilege. So what we saw happen on Wednesday was the manifestation of white male rage portrayed as an insurrection or a riot, or as I've heard a couple of other people say, a diet coup, which is really what it was. It was a diet coup. There wasn't a succession plan. There wasn't any sort of military that was available to make sure that there was a successful overthrow of power from a president to a military coup. There wasn't any of that. It wasn't any of that. What I did see, and the people that were trying to go after members of Congress and the people that were stealing items from the halls of the Capitol building, yes, they were domestic terrorists. There's no two ways about it. If you go there armed and you go there to physically harm somebody and have plans to do so, and use weapons to do so, that is no different than the Unabomber. That is no different than Timothy McVeigh. That is no different than anybody that shoots up a school indiscriminately to harm children. You are a domestic terrorist. Now, if you were going there because you are a disenfranchised white person that believed in hope, change, and yes, we can from Obama, and then Obama lied to you, and then Trump comes along and says, hey, I'm going to make everything all right, and I'm going to do everything that the previous administration said they were going to do, but ended up not doing. So yeah, you're going to get health care. You're going to get a good paying job, and we're going to do something about immigration. And then that man lied to you also. There's a whole lot of people in the United States right now that feel politically disenfranchised or politically destitute or homeless. And that's understandable given that the Republican Party is completely shook at their responsibilities, and the Democratic Party has no intentions on helping working people. So there's a whole lot of people that were at that Wednesday insurrection, protest, riot, diet coup, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, there were some domestic terrorists there, but I don't want to be a party to hasty generalizations. There were a whole bunch of people there that were like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I want to do physical harm to Mike Pence. I'd like to have a word with Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, you see Chuck Schumer? Yeah, I want some of him. Me and him in a room together for 5 minutes, see what he's got. There were plenty of people that probably weren't behaving that way, as evidenced by the number of people that climbed the walls and marched into that building and were looking to do physical harm. But I will be willing to bet you there were a whole lot of people there that were just like, hey, look, you know what? I'm frustrated with the way America is going right now. And I have a voice and I want to express myself. And for those people, I'm fully in support of that. I'm right there alongside you, because there's a whole lot of people in this country who are completely disenfranchised politically, economically, socially, etc., that don't have anywhere to turn. And when you don't have anywhere to turn or no one you can talk to, you you lash out. And that was a lashing out. That's what part of that was. The other part, and we're going to talk about this on tomorrow's conversation with Reg and Rue and Chris and the amazing Cat Wells. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a bit more about what that coup was all about. And the other part of that coup, what that coup was actually about, it answered a fundamental question. The fundamental question is, hey, do white guys still run this country? And the answer to that question is a resounding yes. I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail on Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. There's plenty of information about that. You can take a look at my social media, and I'll do a little more promotion for that event as it comes closer. And it's coming closer because it's going to be in about 30 hours. In about 30 hours. But my whole point in all of this is there's a whole lot of people that were at that protest riot that feel disenfranchised, that were betrayed by 8 years of Obama when they said, yeah, hope, change, yes, we can. And have now been betrayed by 4 years of Trump saying, yes, make America great again. And now they look at Joe Biden and they look at the people who are in his cabinet, and they look at Joe Biden's previous 37-year career as a public servant, and many of the people who were at, I won't say many, but some of the people who were at that protest or that riot or that insurrection or Wednesday's DC event on Wednesday, they look at Biden and they're like, you know what, I don't trust him either, because he rode shotgun for everything that Obama did. And Obama is the reason I'm in the place I'm in right now. And then he did a whole lot of terrible stuff before Obama got there. So I have no reason to trust Biden. There's a whole lot of people that feel that way. and there is fault to be laid at the feet of both parties, Democratic and Republican. The Democrats have always, or at least historically, claimed to be the party that wants to help the working class, but they've done nothing but. The Republicans have always been historically been the party that focuses on businesses, but they've gone even so far to say, hey, you know, we're not even going to focus on all businesses. We're going to focus in on just 1% in big tech. You know, let's not forget the Republicans now have been completely disingenuous. They're the same party that doesn't want to go ahead and impeach Trump 11 or 12 days before his term ends. But 4 months ago, about 3 months ago, Amy Coney, they had no problem appointing Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court 30 days before an election. I'm going to make sure I say that again so everybody understands what I just said. The Republicans have a problem with trying to impeach a president 11 or 12 days before his term is up, but had no problems appointing a Supreme Court justice from start to finish 30 days before an election. No problem doing that. So, the Republican Party, they don't give a shit. And the Democrats, they don't care. So, again, there's been a bunch of comments, oh, well, Joe, you're a racist, and you're divisive. You're talking about race, that's divisive. Bringing up inequality is divisive. Talking about Black people and white people, that's divisive. No, it's honest. That's what it is. It's honest. It's honest. And it's these sort of honest conversations that need to continue to happen. And it's these sort of honest conversations that need to be had. And I'll say it before and I'll say it again. I said this during the last Live and Direct chat that I did. There is a problem with white supremacy in this country. There's a problem with racism in this country. And it is not Black people that enslaved white people. It was white people that enslaved Black people. It is not a bunch of white people, rich white landowners that were signatories to the United States Constitution. It was a bunch of rich white landowners that were signatories to the Constitution. It was not white people that did not get any benefits of the United States Constitution until the 13th Amendment. It was black people that did not get any benefits of the United States Constitution until the 13th Amendment. It is not white people who have been subjugated to Jim Crow. It is black people that have been subjugated to Jim Crow. It is not white people that have been the unfortunate recipients of redlining. It is black people that have been the unfortunate recipients of redlining. So let's back it up. Let's really take a look at where we're going with this before we start having conversations and start calling people of color divisive because they choose to point out inequalities of racism when it exists. Let's really back up and really have a think about it. Really have a real look inside yourself before you start coming at me with that sort of conversation. In 1619, it wasn't a group of present-day Angolan pirates and sailors that trafficked a bunch of Spaniards and Portuguese people from Europe and brought them to what is now known as Fort Monroe, Virginia. It was the other way around. It was a bunch of Spaniards and Portuguese sailors and merchants that trafficked a bunch of Africans and brought them to Africa. So again, let's go ahead and read some books. Let's watch some documentaries. Let's look at some TED Talks before you start coming at me saying I'm being divisive because I'm talking about race. Let's really talk about that. And if you get defensive, that is the very definition of white fragility. And if you want to learn more about what white fragility is actually all about, go through the Joe and Kat Chats, episode 4. Kat and I did an entire episode called Karens and White Fragility. That is literally the name of the title, episode 4. Go watch it. It's an incredibly insightful episode, if I don't say so myself, where we talk about how Karens become Karens and what white fragility is. And again, many of the people who say that, hey, you know what, talking about race is divisive. Talking about race is divisive. Those are the same people who are afraid to have, those are the same people who have a fear-based mindset. And they're afraid to have these conversations because they're afraid that they will either have to answer questions that they don't want the answer to. They will have to make the necessary changes in their life, the necessary and difficult changes in their life, and they don't want to do that. Or they don't know what questions need to be asked in order to change their ways. And I understand that it's difficult to change. I understand it. I get it. I understand it. When I got married a little more than 11 years ago, I was 100 pounds heavier than I am now. I was a fat guy. But you know what? I had to change. It's either change or die. And I like being alive. So again, calling out all my white brothers and sisters. Do that cultural autopsy. Do that personal inventory. Take a look at yourself inside and say, hey, you know what? Do I have these sort of racist tendencies that could come to the surface if triggered? Do I have this inside of me? And if you do, okay, that's fine. It's fine. It's okay to admit that. It's okay to admit that. And I want you to admit that. Because the sooner you admit that, the sooner you can now go ahead and take the necessary steps to change. Because I want people to change. I want people to become anti-racist. I don't want people, and I want to make sure everybody understands this. I'm having this conversation today from a viewpoint of love. But love sometimes comes in the form of having difficult and uncomfortable conversations. And this is one of those difficult and uncomfortable conversations. If you're in a relationship and somebody breaks up with you, or you break up with somebody, you know what? It's not because they still love you, they just can't be with you anymore. I'm divorced. I think everybody knows that. When my ex-wife told me, hey, you know what? I don't want to be married to you anymore. Okay. All right. That came from even though it was like, you know what? I hate your guts. You know what? Deep down, it ultimately did come from a place of love, because the relationship needed to change. And the relationship, the fundamental relationship between Black people and white people, or let me even expand it, the fundamental relationship between people of color and white folks needs to change in this United States. And it's not going to change with a couple of Black Lives Matter squares on Instagram, or a couple of or the words Black Lives Matter painted on a basketball court or a football field. It's going to come from difficult and uncomfortable conversations with those who have been oppressed. It's also going to come from white folks looking inside of themselves and saying, hey, you know what? I need to do some serious soul searching. I need to look at myself in the mirror and say, hey, you know what? Am I doing right? Not only am I doing right by people of color, but am I doing right by myself? Because it's also not only the social imperative that matters, it's also the moral imperative that you must look into. Say, hey, you know what? It's not right to treat people who look different than me in this fashion. Just like I said about the people who were not necessarily the people that broke into the building and stole registered mail and pens and lecterns and other items from the Capitol building. I'm talking about the people who were just there, like, hey, you know what? I'm pissed off and I need to let off some steam. I'm angry. I'm angry at the way this country's going right now. I don't necessarily look at them as domestic terrorists, because I will be willing to bet you, not necessarily political, not necessarily in terms of political ideology, but let me rephrase that, not necessarily in terms of political party, but in terms of the courage and willingness to mobilize and organize. There's a whole lot in that in me. I thoroughly understand that, because again, 11 days ago, I said, look, I don't want a resolution. I want a revolution. Now, how they went about it I disagree with. But the fundamental premise of many of those people who, not necessarily not the ones that walked into the building, but the ones that were there, like, hey, you know what? I'm pissed off about the way shit is happening in this country right now. Because hey, I've been out of work. I haven't had a job. I haven't had health care. Okay, I get that. Thoroughly get that. I've been the one calling for workers' strikes for months now, better part of almost a year now. Shut this country down. Shut it down. And get people in Washington to pay attention. And maybe what happened on Wednesday is the way that we get our politicians to pay attention. Now, unfortunately, what they're doing is wasting time with trying to get this impeachment going, when they should be trying to figure out the rest of Biden's cabinet, and they should be figuring out how to get $2,000 checks to every American, and they should be trying to figure out how to get health care for everybody. I think that's a more effective use of our taxpayers' time than, hey, let's go ahead and try to push through this impeachment. For what? For what? Do something that's actually going to help Americans. Let me rephrase that. Do something popular that's actually going to help Americans. And you know what's popular? $2,000 checks. You know what's popular? Medicare for all. You know what's popular? Oh, bringing all the troops home. That's a wonderful idea. You know what's really popular? And easy to do student loan forgiveness. That can be done with a couple of pen strokes and 30 minutes on Google Docs. Type it up, print it out on that really good thick government paper, have the lawyers look over it, done. Executive order. Talking about race is not divisive. The unwillingness to have the conversation with somebody that looks different than you is divisive. And part of the reason why I've been doing these conversations for so long now is because I am willing to have those difficult conversations. What I am not going to do is help you do the work that you personally need to invest in. I'm not doing that. But the conversation, yeah, okay, no problem. We can talk. We can talk. But you've got to do the work. It's no different than any other endeavor that any other person needs to take on his or her own. I could show you how to swing the kettlebell, but ultimately you have to swing the kettlebell for yourself. I could show you how to power mix, but you actually have to get on the turntables and mix. And it's the same thing here. I could talk to you and have these conversations with you about white privilege and white fragility and racism and intersectionality. But ultimately, you have to put in the work in order to make the necessary changes. Let's go to a couple of comments. Joe Thompson saying, hello, Joe. Hello, Joe. It's easy enough. Eric, what's good, Eric? Right on time, what's good, Joe? How you feel? Eric, I've never been better, brother. Never been better. Never been better. Because the amount of clarity that I'm having right now and the amount of lucidity that I'm having with each of these conversations, it's beneficial, brother. It's beneficial. Not only for me, but for anyone else that wants to take part and participate and learn. Because I don't want to be one of these. I'm a community-minded brother, as I'm sure you already know and many other people know. But the big part of the word community is unity. I want people to come together. I want people to come together. But I also want fairness. I don't want people to come together simply for the sake of coming together. I want people to come together in an understanding that fairness, equity, and equality must be wrapped up in that togetherness and that unity. Because you can't have unity when there's no solidarity. You can't have unity when there is unfairness and inequality. You can't have unity that way. And unity is not a one-way street. Unity is two-way traffic. There's a line from one of the greatest songs ever written, and you know I'm an 80s baby. There's a group called Wham, George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley. They had a song on their second album called Make It Big, and there's a song called Everything She Wants. And there's a line in that song where George Michael sings, he says, "You showed me you can take, you've got some giving to do." If we're going to share, and if we're going to have unity, it's unity all the way around. It's share and share alike. Debo Kusa saying, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Debo. Jeff saying, I don't know anyone who feels closer to another when you are being stonewalled. Exactly. Exactly. How could you, we need more windows rather than walls, Jeff. We need more windows rather than walls. sure many of you also know that I love my 80s R&B. Many of you already know that. One of the great R&B singers of the 80s is a man from the Bronx, New York named Freddie Jackson. One of his great songs is a song called Have You Ever Loved Somebody? And the second verse of the song, Freddie Jackson says, you build a fortress around yourself your emotions can't hide forever. You've got your heart securely locked away and you won't let nobody in. That fortress around people's hearts, that is the defense mechanism when a person of color confronts a non-person of color about race. We're not necessarily trying to change minds, we're trying to get to your heart. Because if you can change your heart, you can change your mind. But if your heart's securely locked away and you won't let anybody in, then having the uncomfortable and difficult conversations that are necessary for change becomes impossible. Eric saying, what do you think will happen on Jan 20th? I'm quite nervous. I have no idea. Brother, your guess is as good as mine. Your guess is as good as mine. But I think there's some other questions that need to be asked before that. I'm more concerned about what's going to happen before January 20th in the halls of Congress. Because I certainly think if President Trump is no longer president before the 20th of January, I've said this to a few people, what happened last Wednesday is going to look like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. If Donald Trump is no longer president by before January 20th, Wednesday's events will look like a walk through the Magic Kingdom in Disney World compared to what his Trump supporters could potentially do in Washington, D.C., and not just Washington, D.C., but other major cities around the United States. Because if they can get loose in Washington, D.C., you think they won't get loose in New York City, or Los Angeles, or Austin, Texas, or Houston, Texas, or Miami, Florida, or Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Seattle, Washington, or my beloved hometown of Baltimore, Maryland, where they've already had race riots there, the Freddie Gray situation from almost 6 years ago. You don't think things could pop off in Ferguson, Missouri once again? Or Atlanta, Georgia? Or Rochester, New York? Or Louisville, Kentucky? Okay. So I think that's the question that we need to ask, in addition to your prescient question also, Eric, is what's going to happen on January 20th? What's going to happen on January 20th is Joe Biden is going to be president of the United States. The inauguration will most likely take place. Now, what will happen now? Supposedly, this rally that took place last Wednesday was planned for months. Everybody knew about it, and the police took a laissez-faire approach to it. Everybody knows January 20th is happening. Shit, it's in the Constitution. Everybody knows that's coming. The National DC Metro Police, National Park Police, U.S. Capitol Police, National Guard, and if there's any sort of state troopers that you want to bring in from the neighboring states of Virginia and Maryland, okay, make sure everybody's ready. Please. Please. Because the United States has done a wonderful job embarrassing itself to the world. The last thing the United States wants to deal with again is another global embarrassment to the world, because we can't have an inauguration that is because we have an inauguration that has loads of unrest. So if the United States wants to come correct, Make sure you're prepared. Don't come with excuses by saying, oh, well, we were overwhelmed, or we didn't know this was going to happen, or we were caught by surprise. We were shocked and surprised. Don't bullshit me. Don't bullshit the millions of American people that see through your bullshit. Cut it out. We're smarter than that. Don't insult our intelligence. January 20th is coming. Prepare for it. The same goes to the United States for the members of Congress. You all knew July 31st was coming. You all could have done something in terms of a stimulus package before then. You all should have been negotiating a new stimulus package in May instead of letting people's benefits expire and then coming up with a meager stimulus package that's wrapped into a spending bill days before the end of the year. Don't lie to us. Don't lie to us. And I think now more than ever, people from both political spectrums, both political ideologies, are going to have to continue to apply pressure to our government. Because there's a whole lot more in common that I think a lot of disenfranchised Republicans have with a lot of disenfranchised Democrats. And it was Gandhi that once said, my enemy's enemy is my friend. And if Democrats have to make some quote unquote unholy alliances with some Republicans so everybody benefits, then that's what we need to be doing. Because I want everybody to be successful. I want everybody to win. But I also want fairness. I also want fairness across the board. Fairness, everybody. Fairness. I said all I wanted to say for today. I want to continue to thank each of you for your support and your participation and for watching. We're a community and we grow together. We go together and we grow together. And that's the message I want to put out there today. We go together and we grow together. And in order to have a community, you must have unity. And in order to have unity, you must have fairness, equity, and equality. And I'm coming from a place of love. And love sometimes means that you have to have difficult and uncomfortable conversations. I have no problem having them. Again, thank you to the fine, magical, and wonderful folks at AmericaHates.us for the t-shirt. I appreciate you. It's a Black-owned business. Support them. They have wonderful designs. The shirt is buttery soft. Holds up in the wash quite well. Delicate cycle, turn it inside out. They have a lot of messages on their apparel that people need to see and understand and digest and absorb. Thank you for watching. Peace.